Okay. Got it. All right. Well, welcome everybody to the September 23rd meeting of the Thurston Conservation District. I am the newly minted vice chair, and TJ was not able to make it this evening. So I get to lead us through the agenda. And we have some guests from Whidbey Island tonight. I cannot see everybody. I see Mark. Are you from?
Yes, hi. I'm a supervisor at Whidbey Island Conservation District, interested in your compensation study.
Yeah, so I hear. And then we also have, let's see. I know I've lost you. Who else do we have from Whidbey? Oh, Heather, there you are. Hi, Heather.
Hi, I'm the district manager at the Whidbey Island Conservation District.
All right. And who else do we have here? Anybody else? Whidbey? Edwards.
Yep, Dave Edwards. I'm also a supervisor.
Oh, okay. And you're from Whidbey Island also?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then it looks like we also have Charlotte Persons from the League of Women Voters tonight, are you?
Yes. Well, actually, I'm representing myself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And Ariane or Ariani?
Ariane.
Ariane.
I'm from the Washington Federation of State Employees.
Great. And who else do we have who is a guest? Is that it? Anybody else? All right. Well, welcome everyone. Well, our first order of business is to review the agenda, and I know that Sarah would like to make a suggestion about that. Sarah?
Yeah, thank you. I'll make a quick announcement that our chair, TJ Johnson, I think you mentioned is unable to attend, but we are here with a quorum of supervisors, Helen Wheatley, Doug Rushton, and David Ayal. I think Betsy DeVreda will be joining us shortly. I'd love to request that we add, if the board is comfortable on consent, those 3 cost share contracts that you approved the funding addendums to at the last meeting for Mills, Schwartz, and Ginter. That's my proposal.
All right. And I took a look at them. That's fine with me. Any discussion about that? Dave or Doug?
No, that sounds fine to me. One thing we might consider is moving the presentation that the Whidbey Island folks are here to hear up higher so they don't have to sit through our entire meeting if they don't want to.
I think that's a great idea. Let's move that to item number 5. Do you think? Or should we just move it right up to item number 3?
I'd say 3.
And generally, the consent agenda and the public comment don't take a whole lot. We might have public comment this time because we do have a couple of folks.
Yeah, let's
Yes, we do. Yes.
maybe we should do the public comment and then the salary study, and then move on back to the consent agenda and work our way down from there. How does that sound?
I think it's good unless the public has comments they want to make on something later on, but they can always interject at that time too.
All right, sorry, I had a locked version of our agenda, which was really unhelpful for you guys. Now I have an unlocked version. So I'm moving salary study up above partner reports. Would you also, did I hear you right, Helen? Would you like to also move the consent agenda below the salary study presentation?
Yeah, that's okay with everybody else.
Okay with me.
Okay. Do we need a resolution for this, or are we good?
We'll just take a motion on approving the final agenda as presented.
Okay.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Doug, seconded by
Second.
Dave. All right. All in favor? Say aye, since I can't see all you.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? All right,
Helen,
yes.
remember TJ usually calls our names out one at a time because,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay, well, all right. Let's see, Doug, I think Doug moved it.
Yeah,
Okay, David,
Aye.
Betsy,
Aye.
and me, aye. So that motion passes.
yeah. I'd suggest too, if we have another motion, to ask for abstentions too.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Learning as we go. All right, so with that, I think we have our agenda. So let's move on to public comment. Public comment this evening. Yes, oh, Leah. Yes,
Motioned, and who seconded that?
it was Doug who made the motion and it was David who seconded it,
Thank you.
I think. All right, Charlotte.
Hi. Let me make sure I'm unmuted. Am I muted?
No, we can hear you.
Great. Okay. Thank you for having me here tonight. I just want to talk to you really briefly about the Upcastle rezone and land use amendment to the comprehensive plan. I'm sure most of you have heard of this by now. And I'm not representing anybody. I'm affiliated with League of Women Voters, Black Hills Audubon Society, and I write for Works in Progress. But I'm just here for me. So just wanted to remind you that this particular code rezone is not just the 33 acres involved. The code changes will apply on the date that the code is accepted to any land that meets 3 conditions. Those 3 conditions are that it be agricultural land adjacent to industrial development, that it be near an arterial road of any kind, and that it be near a railroad. So that actually applies to a lot of parcels in the county in kind of a scattershot way. The planning commissioners actually asked for that information from staff at their last meeting. But the result of these code changes is the opposite of planning. And it's also a big change to the comp plan. The comp plan, as you know, preferences the values of preserving and preserving the rural character of land. And of course, this would be the opposite of the code changes.
Charlotte, I'm going to interrupt. I can't hear you very well. I think
Okay, I'm as close as I can get to my.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, so these proposed code changes for the Upcastle project would do the opposite of preserving those values, preserving farmland and the rural character of land. And they would do that in sort of this scattershot way through the county. So I believe you need a real plan to do that. If you're going to change how we do industrial zoning in rural lands, there should be a plan, not just sort of throwing out this code change. But the other part is that we may not need any more industrial land in our rural parts of our county. According to the 2021 Buildable Lands Report, we have twice as much land that's zoned industrial within the urban growth boundaries of the cities. So I guess that's my timer.
No, that was my.
Anyway, that's really all I had to say. So thank you.
Charlotte, is there a hearing on that?
Yes, it's October 6th. And there's actually a whole web page from the county on it with all the documents and a way to click on a thing that you can send in comments before the hearing.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Helen, that was me interrupting. The Ag Committee's been discussing this item, and I'm happy to forward that information to the board if you'd like to see that webpage and make public comment.
Does anybody have any questions or comments, any of the supervisors on this? Betsy?
Yeah, I spoke with Charlotte yesterday and I agreed to just get on board and try to spread the word as best I can with farmers, and knowing farmers, make it as easy for them to make comments as I can. Give them good short talking points, and maybe even wait. We're going to do it next week so that they don't have too much time to procrastinate. So she felt that farmer comments would be especially useful. And
Yeah.
she was really good at informing me of how useful public sentiment is. So I appreciate that, Charlotte.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I cannot.
Thank you for coming too.
Thank you.
I can't see the other supervisors here, so anybody else?
You might try a different view, Helen,
Yeah, I guess so, because,
because I can see everyone.
okay. Well, I'm on gallery, so I don't know. Maybe, oh, I know, I need to widen my gallery. I'm sorry, everybody. Okay, there we go. That's a little better. All right, well, is there any other comment this evening? Does not look like it. So let's move on then. Thank you, Charlotte. And let's move on to the salary study presentation.
Great. I will introduce Sam Heinz with Public Sector Personnel Consulting, who was kind of the lead on this study, and we'll be giving you the presentation this evening. Sam, hello, welcome. Can you share your screen?
Yes, let me see. Share screen. It says host disabled participant screen sharing. So I don't know if that's something that can be fixed right now or how that can be remedied.
Yes. I'll make
Okay,
you the
great.
host. That's the quick answer.
Awesome. Okay. Let me get this running. Is that coming up for everybody? Can you see the slide?
Looks great.
Okay. Well, just to begin, I'm Sam Heinz with Public Sector Personnel Consultants. We've been working with Thurston Conservation District since around June of this year on a job classification study and a salary survey. So tonight we're just going to kind of go over the findings and the recommendations. We're going to discuss a little bit of the methodology and then give you guys a plan to move forward administering salaries that are competitive, relational to the marketplace in which these jobs exist. So just as kind of a beginning, a little bit of the scope of the study. The first phases that we kind of began with were planning. So we had some just telephone conversations with Sarah just to learn about the goals of the organization. The next portion of the study that we completed was the job analysis and classification study. It's really important for us to learn about jobs before we go and look for them in the marketplace. So what we did was we had a kind of like an all hands on deck meeting with your employees where we discussed the process and what would be required of them. So we had them fill out a position analysis questionnaire. This is a tool that we use to learn about the jobs. It gives them an opportunity to tell us what their job entails so that we're not relying on maybe an outdated job description. And it, you know, it helps us to capture like how the job is being performed at this particular moment in time. We'll go over a little bit this particular section a little bit more in depth on the following slides. The second kind of phase of the study that I would characterize was the market survey. So after we learned about the jobs, we went and we looked for them in the marketplace. We used, I think, 11 comparator agencies. So these were other conservation districts in the area, other cities, other agencies that had similar jobs, provided similar types of services. After that, we took a look at the current salary plan that was in place at Thurston Conservation District and made some recommended changes to your salary plan. Once we had kind of settled on the new salary schedule, we looked to place each position into a market sensitive range using the survey data that we had gathered. We did an analysis of internal alignment, and then just kind of at the end here, we proposed a fiscal impact. So showing like what would it cost the conservation district to kind of adopt the proposed recommendations. And then kind of on the tail end, something that we haven't completed yet, but something that usually happens at the end of the study is we're going to be using the content that we got from the job classification study to update job descriptions with like a consistent template across the organization. So just moving into a little bit more detail, the study phases, again, we met with Sarah around June just to discuss the organization's goals and the timeline. In the same month, we introduced the study to the employees and distributed the PAQs. They were given about, I think, 2 to 3 weeks to complete those, and that's when we began the job classification review. Kind of running concurrently, we had identified the comparator agencies and solicited information from those organizations. Kind of on the tail end of August was when we finished up the survey. We discussed pay plan design with Sarah and some of the leadership at the Conservation District. We came up with new min to max ranges for each position, and then we provided a cost estimate. And so now we're kind of here at the tail end of the study doing this presentation to the board and giving you guys some options for moving forward. So this is just kind of getting into a little bit more detail, the classification review. This is really the first phase of the study. Employee participation. We held that kind of all hands on deck meeting where we introduced the study to all employees. Every person was invited to complete a PAQ, either as an individual or as a group. There are some people that share job titles within the organization. So if they were in agreement that their job duties and tasks were fairly similar and they wanted to fill out the PAQ as a group, they were allowed to do so. Management also participated. So after we came back with our initial recommendations, we got in touch with Sarah and some of the senior management just to gather a little bit of feedback about some of the titling recommendations. Where necessary, this feedback was incorporated into the classification plan.
I need to stop you for a second. Will you define some of your terms, please, like PAQ, comparator, or two that strike me? If you define those terms, I've worked in personnel quite a bit, and I've never seen either one of those before, but I'm sure there's a clear explanation.
Sure. PAQ stands for Position Analysis Questionnaire, and this is a document that was distributed to the employees. It's kind of laid out like a job description where they tell us like what their job entails, what they do on a day-to-day basis. And then comparator, those are the agencies that we gathered survey data from. So those are agencies that you guys typically will compete with to either obtain talent or retain talent. They could be, in some instances, agencies that are like in the geographic area that have similar types of services. So we'll go a little bit further in depth on the comparator, but does that answer those two questions?
Yeah, those are what I assumed they mean, but I think we're talking about something fairly serious here, so I want to make sure we're talking the same language. So thanks for defining the terms.
Great. Yeah, and if anybody else has any questions, feel free to stop me at any point during the presentation. So this is kind of the classification review process, just distributing those PAQs. On our end, we read through each one of those and then make kind of a titling recommendation. Job analysis is really important. It's the basis for the identification of occupations, job families, job series. And then we also use the content from the position analysis questionnaire to develop new job descriptions. Proper job classification is the foundation for sound pay practices. It's really important that the titles describe the work that's being performed. You know, kind of a goal of a classification study is that employees are able to communicate to some of the landowners or the clients that they're interacting with, like what their job entails based on their job title. And that can be kind of tricky with some of the services that you guys provide here at the Conservation District. But really, we wanted to make sure that titles describe the work being performed and that the titles are consistent with industry standards so that, you know, if they're working with a colleague or a peer, you know, in the same type of work, that they can relate what type of work that they perform. So here are classification review findings. When we started the distribution of the position and analysis questionnaires, there were 14 unique titles within the conservation district. During the study, we always hop on, it's kind of like hopping on a moving train because organizations are changing, they're breathing. 2 new titles were brought on as a result of promotions. So currently on the roster of jobs, there's 16 total titles. As a result of this study, 7 positions are recommended to retain their current title, and 7 positions are recommended just to receive a minor titling modification. So nobody was like really working out of their job classification. We didn't see anything that kind of stuck out as needing like a new title or maybe a job class that needed to be split up. Really, you know, 7 of those positions are going to remain the same under the same current titling protocol, and then 7 are proposed to receive a minor title modification. So that was kind of the first component of the study was the job classification portion. After we had learned about the jobs and taken the time to review the PAQs, we began the market survey and the analysis of external competitiveness. Market competitors include employers that the conservation district competes with to obtain and retain qualified employees. When we're doing our salary survey, we're comparing the jobs of these organizations and not necessarily the characteristics of the organizations themselves. So you're going to see on the comparator list that there are some agencies that are larger. There are going to be some agencies that are maybe smaller. It could be that the budget for these agencies are different, or maybe that they're you know, demographics, like the clientele that they serve is different. But really what we're looking for are comparing like jobs to like jobs. When we identified these comparator agencies, we solicited their pay plans, their organizational charts, and their job descriptions to aid in the process of job matching. It's never going to be the case that we're going to find a 100% job match, right? You know, probably even within the organization, there are people who share a job title who are doing slightly different things. But when we do a job matching, we're looking for the job that's most similar to the job in Thurston Conservation District. In addition to public sector agencies, we also incorporated private sector data through a database that we pay to have access to called the Economic Research Institute. Private organizations are a little bit less likely to put forth salary information as opposed to a public agency where that is often subject to like an information request. But this particular database gathers data based on geographic area. And for jobs that have fungibility or portability to the private sector, we've included this private sector data as part of our salary survey sheets. Here you have a listing of the market competitors. So we identified 8 agencies kind of in your geographic area. Again, you can see some of them are conservation districts, some of them are cities. Really, we're looking for agencies that have similar types of jobs. We've included private sector data where applicable for jobs that have portability in the private sector. And then for there were a few positions that just kind of came up with a few data points. We wanted to benchmark every job within the organization. Typically, we try and have anywhere from like 5 to 10 job matches for a position. And so there were a few where we were just a little bit light on the data. And so where needed, we've supplemented those benchmark positions with data from Whatcom Conservation District and from Spokane Conservation District. So typically once you identify the market comparators, you would begin with a selection of the benchmark positions. You guys are a really small organization, so we just went ahead and tried to gather data for every position. Again, there's no such thing as a perfect match when we're looking for like jobs. That's really why we dig into the job description level though. So when we solicit from those comparator agencies, we're looking at their pay plans, org charts, reporting, duties, things like that. And so we're looking for about 80% similarity in those KSAs. We did collect data for every position in Thurston Conservation District. Here, I just kind of have an example of a salary survey worksheet. So since there are 16 job titles within the Conservation District, we have 16 salary survey sheets kind of in an Excel file. running behind this. So here in the left-hand column, you can see, this is from a different survey that we performed, but you can see the title in the upper left-hand corner, kind of proceeding to the column to the right, you can see the survey job class. So you can see kind of in this example that we don't always match job title to job title. Here you can see, for example, that we're matching, in some instances, the senior equipment operator to the equipment operator in this organization. Sometimes we match the second level. We're really looking to see like what job duties most closely align to the job duties described in the PAQ that we read through. So you can see sometimes that it doesn't necessarily always align directly to the title. Kind of moving again to the right, you can see the survey organization. So those are the comparator organizations that were included in the study. When we do our analysis, we're comparing midpoint to midpoint. Here, the market midpoint is defined as the public sector plus the private sector divided by 2, so they're weighted equally. The spreadsheet is really similar for what we did for Thurston Conservation District. In the right-hand column, you can see the variance expressed in terms of raw dollar amounts and then as a percentage. Typically, anything that's more than 5% behind the market midpoint is a position that we would evaluate as needing an adjustment to their range. So using this kind of tool, it helps us to identify like which positions within the organization are furthest behind market, and kind of lets us like triage your limited budget dollars to identify which ones have fallen behind. How do we get those up to speed? So this is kind of the product that we turned in or that we used during our analysis. So here are just some of the survey findings. So like I said, we produced 16 of those salary survey sheets for 16 of your job classifications within the organization. For half of those, they were below the market at an average rate of about 11.5% behind the market. The other half of your positions were within a comparable range. So anything within plus or minus 5%, we typically characterize as being within a competitive range. And then in some instances, during some surveys, we find some positions that may be ahead of market. In this case, there were none that were ahead of the market. Again, this is just comparing the min to max range that is used for the position and doesn't necessarily pertain to an individual employee's salary. So this is just kind of helping us to evaluate those min to max goalposts that you use to administer pay for each position. So once we had identified which positions were behind the market, which ones were at market, we needed to slot these positions onto a salary schedule. The current salary schedule that the Conservation District utilizes only has 6 ranges with varying distance between the midpoints of each range. Basically, it doesn't allow us to apply survey data in a very effective way. And so in discussion with Sarah, we have talked to moving to a new salary schedule. The proposed salary schedule consists of 30 ranges with a consistent distance between the midpoint of each range. We're going to maintain the same number of steps and the distance between steps that you guys currently utilize. I think that's really important because your employees have familiarity with the grade and step plan that you guys currently have. What this allows us to do though is to use that market data and apply it in a really precise way. Since there's 5% between the midpoints of each range, it also helps to create logical relationships between sequential job series. You know, between like a senior and a non-senior level, or from a senior to a manager, you want to have a little bit of distance between those jobs. That's not something that's really very well accommodated on your current salary schedule. And so the salary schedule design was kind of a part of the product that we're also, you know, creating for the Conservation District, and it will allow the Conservation District moving forward to continue to administer pay like in a way that relates to survey data. So here you can see your current salary schedule. You guys have kind of those 6 large classifications. Really, you only have 5 ranges, and then you have 1 that's paid at a flat rate. This is what we're proposing moving to. So it follows the same logic, right, with the same number of steps and the same distance between steps. So there's 5% from step 1 to step 2. There's 5% between the midpoints of each range as well. Really, step 1, range 1, just starts out at the minimum wage in Washington, which I think is $13.69, and then it's elaborated from there. Really, what this allows us to do is to apply the survey data really precisely. So for range assignments, the first kind of task that we do is we reference the survey data that we gathered on those benchmark sheets. Here we have an example. For the administrative assistant, the market midpoint came back at $47,479. On that same salary schedule from the previous slide, I have a formula that runs in the back that shows the midpoint of each range. It tells me, based on the market midpoint, which range's midpoint is this closest to. So here in this particular example, you can see that the market midpoint is closest to the midpoint of range 6. And so this is the grade that we assign to the position. So we did this same process for each position within the organization, and that's kind of how we began to elaborate the pay plan. The next step that we did was internal equity and internal alignment. So now that we have the survey data that has recommended a grade or a range for each position, we also want to take into consideration how jobs within the organization relate to each other. We want to encourage career progression and progression within a job family or series. There were some minor modifications that were made to the range assignment based on internal equity. Historically, you guys have paid a few jobs like within the same range. And so there was maybe 1 or 2 instances where survey data came back and said, hey, you know, this position should be in a 12, this other position should be in a 13. You know, knowing that you guys have historically paid them in the same grade, we may have come back and said, hey, let's put them both in 13. So this is kind of, you know, internal equity, internal alignment. This is a process of just like leveling jobs within the organization. So using the survey data as our primary guide for range placement, and then making those minor modifications or those minor tweaks to make sure that positions relate to each other logically within the organization. So that kind of rounded out the salary survey study. We had gathered survey information, we proposed a new salary schedule, and then we slotted jobs into a proposed range. In order to implement the study, just some recommended steps from the conservation district. We would recommend adopting the proposed job classification schematic, which I believe can be found in the report that was issued. We would recommend adopting the proposed salary schedule with the 30 ranges. You can implement the market sensitive range assignments proposed for each position in the conservation district. And then in order to get employees onto a step, what we recommend is we move employees to the step in their proposed range that is closest to, but not less than, their current salary. So in this scenario, nobody's going to be like receiving a reduction in salary. No pay grades have moved like behind what they would have been paid under your current plan. The cost to implement this is around $20,000 or about 2% of your current payroll. So this assigns, you know, kind of like a market sensitive range to each job. In the future, you guys can continue to administer salaries in the same way that you guys have done so in the past, continuing to give steps either based on tenure or merit, and then applying your cost of living adjustment.
Oh, can I just ask a really quick question related to that last slide? Can you just explain for us a little bit further the second to the last bullet point, the reasoning behind that recommendation as opposed to, you know, matching their current step based on what you're talking about, you know, merit or tenure?
Yeah, we did model out like what would it look like if you retained the current step, and the cost for that got really, really high. I think it was like around $100,000, and so this was more just like for a cost effectiveness measure to make sure that you get the goalpost right for the position and then continue to administer salaries throughout that range. You know, within the range, we're able to model out a bunch of different types of scenarios, but this was the one that was the most feasible budget-wise. So, you know, if the conservation district would like for us to model out different scenarios, we're certainly able to do so. But this was the one that, you know, in terms of cost effectiveness, was the one that would be the most feasible, I think, for the organization.
Okay, thank you. And this is gonna come out sounding kind of jumbled. Do you remember if there were issues with just kind of everyone equally going up significantly, or if there were like, you know, maybe a couple of positions that were close or at the maximum step so that, you know, the difference would be pretty substantial for those individuals? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes, I do think that you have some employees who may be like currently capped out, like on their step 10. What happened mostly, because the survey data was pretty good for the majority, for like half of your positions, right? And then half were off by like about 10%. So knowing that your steps are about 5% each, for those individuals who were like in a job classification that was behind market, what I would probably characterize as most commonly happening is that they moved back either 1 step or 2 steps.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, any other questions on this particular slide? Okay, if not, just kind of some salary plan maintenance. It's really common for an organization to conduct a salary survey every 3 to 7 years. I'm just kind of, again, that's like the paper part of the exercise, looking to see, are those min to max goalposts for the positions that you employ competitive within the marketplace through which you compete for talent. Once you compose the salary survey, you can adjust the range for the position. And then you can continue to administer steps so that employees move horizontally through the range and then apply any future cost of living adjustments to the salary structure. So just kind of as a review, we've completed a job classification study and a salary survey. For the job classification study, we invited all employees to tell us about their job through a position analysis questionnaire. With that document, we learned about the positions, and we're also going to be using that information to update job descriptions. The secondary portion of the study was a salary survey. We gathered benchmark data for every role within the organization. About half of the positions were found to be more than 5% behind the market. Following the survey, we recommended a new salary schedule. We slotted each position within the organization onto a market-sensitive range, and then we provided a cost estimate for the conservation district to adopt the ranges. So that being said, I'll open the floor up to any general questions or comments, and then if there's anything that you wanted to add, Sarah, to the study, but yeah.
Thank you so much, Sam. I did want to jump in really quickly, and then I think certainly open the floor if Helen approves to questions from the board. That's really what we have time for tonight on the agenda, is just questions from supervisors. But I would just love to add that Sam and public sector personnel consulting was excellent to work with. We had a great experience and received a lot of responsiveness and data and a lot of time and care in explaining and orienting us to this. And so I just really appreciate, we had a great working experience. So thank you so much, Sam. And so, yeah, happy to do that. And any questions from the board?
I actually had one. Could you explain again why the range, the recommendation is to go from 6 to 30? Is it just so that people can sort of fit properly into some place there?
So when I'm going to go back a few slides and show you your current salary schedule. So if I was to gather the survey data for each position, so there are 16 positions, and I'm looking at the midpoints, I really only have 5 ranges to pick from. And so the distance between the market midpoint and the midpoint of the ranges on here might be really far from each other, right? It's not really that sensitive to the survey data. On a salary schedule like this, where there's more options for me to pick from, I can pick a range whose midpoint is fairly close to the market data. The other thing that's kind of a hindrance on your current salary schedule is that the distance between, like, from assistant to technician to specialist to manager, the distance between the midpoints of those ranges like really varies. So like to go from assistant to technician, it might be 6%, and then technician to specialist is 24%, specialist to manager is like 14%. So there's like not a lot of logical consistency in the structure, and it makes it hard to apply market data if you want like a market-based approach using a tool like this. And so that was part of the discussion that we had with Sarah, was just like moving to a salary schedule that kind of fits, if you're going to have like a market-based philosophy, moving to a salary schedule that can accommodate that.
Yeah, I appreciate this schedule as well, because it provides accuracy that's responsive to the market, as well as, you know, that fairness in between different ranges and steps between different positions. So it's a calculated, consistent formula rather than kind of some arbitrary percentages, but it also allows more growth opportunity within the range assignments for our staff as well. So they have more growth potential within those job classifications. And so this, you know, this matrix that's here will likely, you know, not see any ranges or any classifications or positions at the high end, you know, or at the low end for minimum wage. You know, they'll all be somewhere in the middle. But yeah, it definitely allows a lot more flexibility, and I think a lot more opportunity for staff.
It also allows, just kind of moving forward, like if the organization first saw the need to create a secondary level or maybe like a supervisor level, there are just some like general rules of thumb. So like knowing that there's 5% between the midpoint of each range, if you wanted to create like a second level, you might put that 3 ranges or 15% ahead of like the entry level for that role. So like it also creates a little bit of consistency just organizationally, like looking at it holistically. Since each range is 5% difference, you know, you might have somebody in a 14 versus a 17, you know that there's 15% spread between those two jobs. And so, you know, your current salary schedule, I'm not sure how it came into being, and I think it has served the, you know, interests of the organization fairly well, since half of your jobs were at market. But in terms of like applying the data in a precise way, this wasn't a tool that we could, it wasn't the best tool for the job. And so that's why we recommend moving to a salary schedule like this.
All right, Betsy had a question.
Yeah. So having never really worked in this sort of environment with ranges and steps, so someone gets hired and is it because, say they're a habitat specialist and that range, habitat specialists range is 6? Is that how it works? And then they start at whatever step seems appropriate based on their experience?
So
what are the ranges? I don't know. Can you move from one range to another without changing jobs, without changing positions?
No, so the range would move either when you redo like a salary survey. So if you did one like 2 to 3 years from now, it may say, hey, your habitat specialist is assigned to range 6. It looks like it could move up to a range 8. The way that people move through the range would be through the step adjustments that they would receive, or if you do any cost of living adjustments, you can apply it to the table. But they're not necessarily moving up and down on the salary schedule. They would be moving horizontally. If they were to like go from a range 6 to a range 9, that would be like if their job changed, if they moved into a senior level of the position, or if their job duties maybe changed and they were reclassified to a new role. But ideally, like after this salary survey is performed, the job classification retains the range until you do another salary survey.
Okay. And then I would assume when you reach step 10, either you stay there, you stay at step 10, regardless of whether the amount changes, or you get promoted to a different position to get more money.
Yep. So I don't think this happened in this particular study, but if somebody's like capped out and the market says, hey, like y'all are overpaying for this job, typically we would recommend that the organization like freeze the salary and pay out any increases as like a lump sum. That's not something that's happening here at this particular agency. There are no jobs that were like ahead of market. So if you did have somebody that kind of reaches that step 10 and you applied like the cost of living, they would receive that increase, but we wouldn't recommend like any further step increases. And if you guys, you know, if we would recommend just like, yeah, I don't think that that's the case though for any of the individual employees within the organization.
Thank you.
All right, Doug. Doug had a question.
Yeah, a couple of comments. This is real similar to the state system and the federal system, so it's fairly routine, I think. I'd like to get a copy of this so I can study it, and I think we should have a further discussion at some point, just the board and how we want to proceed with this. I think it's very good information, so thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Sarah, was this sent out as part of the information before?
Yeah, this was sent out electronically to supervisors. I'm happy to resend that information. It was sent out earlier this week. Yeah, again, this is informational presentation today and something that the board can take under consideration. This is perfect timing because we're beginning our 2022 budget development process. So it's great information to receive as we proceed in the next couple of months.
Okay.
Yeah, please do send it again. I didn't get it.
Happy to.
Thank you. And are we sort of pretty much within the 25 minutes that we'd assigned to this, or are we at risk of going over if we take any more questions, Sarah? I didn't really track the time.
Yeah, does the board have any additional questions for Sam?
Nope.
No, doesn't look like it.
Great. I will take back the host and bring the agenda back up.
Okay.
Thank you, Sam.
Definitely. Thank you guys for your time. And if you have any questions moving forward, I'm happy to continue to work with Sarah.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, everyone who came to hear that. All right. So next, I think we're moving on to partner reports. Is that right? Okay. All right. Well, that's an efficient way to downsize the meeting.
What just happened?
Well,
we gave host permissions to share screen over to our presenter, and he forgot to return them before he exited his screen, and so it ended the meeting. So it knocked everyone out.
Right.
But we're back now, and our recording is on.
Okay, and let me just widen. Here's Doug back.
Not yet.
Quite yet.
Okay. While we're waiting, can I ask, because I was a few minutes late, why were there so many people here?
Well, it was folks from Whidbey Island who were interested in hearing that presentation. I assume that they're interested in maybe following suit, perhaps.
Yeah, and we also were joined by our union representative, as well as a couple of our staff.
Right. So, and my apologies, I probably, if I had been thinking a little better, I probably should have done the partner reports. You know, we probably should have done those before the presentation, just because I know it, you know, it's your evening. So sorry about that. But we're doing it now. So let's go ahead with that. Robin sent his report. And I think the only I did want to take note of one thing that he said, and that was simply that FSA has extended the deadline to accept applications for livestock and poultry producers to get funding, COVID funding, it seems like. So that's worth pointing out. So next, Alina, are you ready to?
Helen, Leah had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Leah.
Did consent get moved down or up? Consent?
Maybe I'm moving ahead because I'm working off a paper here. I don't know where the consent went.
Consent is prior to partner reports.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't have it here and I don't see it on the screen. So sorry about that. Well, let's go on to that then. All right. So, so we added those 3 items to the consent agenda.
I'll motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay. So let's see, how do you vote? It was David first, right?
Yes, I vote aye.
Okay, and then Betsy?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye, with reservations. I would certainly have liked to have seen this material beforehand, but I trust Sarah.
Okay. You can still peruse it. It came out this afternoon, a little bit late. Okay, and then I guess it's just me, and I vote aye. So there are no nays and no abstentions. So.
And for some reason, Madam Chair, I got kicked off for about 5 minutes, and I'm not sure what happened there.
That's right. Well, that is because Sarah did not regain control over the meeting. So when when
our host was doing the screen share, they took controls over the screen and then didn't give them back and ended the meeting, and it ended it for everyone. Apologies.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I thought, geez, maybe they don't like me anymore. And just thank you.
Yep.
Never the case.
Sorry, my dog is detecting a squirrel or something. I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, all right. Well, let's go on back to partner reports, and it was Alina's turn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am hoping that you all are doing well and wondering if you are familiar with our non-point activity update that we send out every month. And okay, great. And so I wanted to maybe share my screen, but I don't, after the debacle, I'll just skip that. But I did want to just mention that we have 2 new non-point water quality specialists. Hannah Coe comes to ecology from the Okanagan Conservation District, where she did some riparian water quality program planning and leading. And Heather Pat, who worked for the North Carolina's Department of Environmental Quality Division for Water Resources. So they both are, so Thurston County is kind of our nexus, if you will, just because our focus areas overlap. So Hannah and Heather will be focused on watersheds that drain into the Columbia River and to the coast, whereas Anne and I focus on areas that drain into the Sound. But because Thurston County has those overlaps, that they will definitely be working in Thurston County as well. So I believe we'll bring them around to make introductions these coming months. Since, they're new, a lot of our work has a lot of different moving pieces and a lot of different technical knowledge. So they are in the process of drinking from the fire hose. So they have terrific resumes and experiences that they've brought in to these positions. So that's that great update. And I not sure if you're aware that, Jennifer Riedmeyer and Sean Alperton left us a number of months ago. So it took some time, given the governor's hiring freeze and other processes in order to get these filled. So we're excited. Okay, and the last thing I wanted to just make a quick plug that the water quality grant applications are due on the 12th if your organization is planning to apply for that. Other than that, I hope you all have been enjoying that last bit of sunshine that we've been able to get. That was a nice surprise. And thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you. Any questions? No? All right. Well, I bet you're really happy to have those positions filled. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Our supervisor is thrilled.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to Jean then. Jean, do you want to tell us what's going on with the State Conservation Team?
Yeah, there's a lot going on, as you're probably hearing. My notes up so I don't forget anything. We had a very eventful Conservation Commission meeting here last week. There were actions on the governance of our organization. That's an ongoing process, but the first sort of set parts of that policy were approved by the commission. As well, the goals for our strategic planning process were approved following some feedback from districts that some adjustments were made following. And then the cultural resource policy set was approved. It had gone out for public comment among the districts. We'd received some comment there, and then we had realized that there was an adjustment we needed to make to the language to make it inclusive of VSP projects, which we hadn't thought of initially. So with that small modification, that policy set was passed. And then, of course, the big item was the adoption of the recommendations from the Joint Committee on Elections. So it's the next steps on that. As I understand it, will be that our policy staff, I believe with WACD as well, will reach out to key legislators and try to take a temperature for whether moving forward with the legislative changes that would be required to enact the 4-part sort of compromise package that came out of that committee, whether it would be better to pursue that in the short session or to wait to the next full session. So depending on what folks hear back from members of the legislature who were involved in this issue, the timing might be one thing or another. And then, of course, you've all heard Carol Smith will be leaving us. Her last day will be October 15th. An interim was appointed also at this meeting. His name is Kirk Robinson. For anybody who knows him, you'll remember that he served as interim before Carol came on board. So he's coming out of retirement to help us out, sort of as the search goes on and as the new person, the permanent ED, is able to leave their position and come on and occupy the new role. So a lot happened in one meeting. Can I answer any questions around that or anything else you're curious about?
This is Doug. Folks may not know that Kirk used to be a Thurston CD employee.
Oh, see, I didn't know that. Part of a long list of things Doug knows that I don't.
I had a quick question, Helen.
Yeah.
I'm curious if the commission has determined what the participation process will look like in the ED hiring.
Right, great question. We're getting that question a lot. I haven't seen it laid out. I do know that Chair Longley intends to have input from conservation districts and I believe partners, but I haven't seen anything that details exactly what the shape of that is or the time frame. If you have specific suggestions or requests along those lines, I'd recommend reaching out so folks can consider that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments for Jean? No. Okay, well, thank you. Doug, what do you have to tell us about the WACD?
I have to unmute myself first. Don't want you guys to hear me coughing all the time. There's nothing in addition to the written reports that I filed for WACD or NACD.
Okay. Anybody have anything for Doug? I'm trying to remember if I did, but I don't think so.
We are accepting comments on the NACD Pacific Region Annual Plan. It's on the 5 things to know. Tom Salzer has put a link there so you can do that. The Pacific region is the first region in the country to have a strategic plan and also to develop an annual plan. So we're working on the annual plan now and are seeking input.
Okay, great.
Helen, you are on mute.
All right, so does that cover everything for you, Doug?
Now I have to unmute again. Yes, it does. I will speak to the resolution, though, on establishing the Sustainable Funding Committee.
Okay.
When we get to it.
All right. Okay, so I think that is it for partner reports then. So next item is resolutions, looks like.
The next item on the list is our TCD resolution 2021-06, which is authorizing use of our cash operating reserve fund. That's the fund that was set up just for the purpose outlined here in this resolution to use to help manage cash flow throughout the year, particularly between our rates and charges payments, which happen in May and November. It's always a little bit lean right before those, and each year we continue to build more and more cash flow resilience to sort of equalize those waves. I sent out this draft resolution to the board as well as Susan's cash flow projections, which are estimating that this sort of later October check run, we will need to have additional cash flow on hand to help pay for that. And the main reasoning behind this is we are starting construction on so many things and design on so many projects. And we're starting to receive those invoices here at the end of September, beginning of October from our consultants that are doing a lot of that design work. And so those are pretty hefty invoices. The projection that Susan put forward notes that we would need about $95,000 of additional operating funds to carry us through that November 10th rates and charges payment. We are requesting in here a use of up to $120,000, just in case we get some additional invoices that we have not calculated and included in that initial cash flow analysis between now and then. So some of those that we receive later in October, of course, will be in our first November check run. So it'll be after our rates and charges payment has been received, but just in case we receive an additional, I know we received one just this week, so this offers a little bit of a buffer for us to be adaptable. And so we will, our proposal is that we'll just pull from that fund only as we need that. So of course, if we receive vouchers and payments sooner from our grants, for example, we may not necessarily need to utilize all of that. Of course, it would be anything that's withdrawn would be reflected in your monthly financial report to the board, and then repaid in November, which would also be reflected in your financial report once that November 10th rates and charges payment has been received. And just for those of you that don't know, we receive payments monthly that are direct deposit, automatic deduction, direct deposit from Thurston County, go into our bank account for rates and charges. We just see those big influxes of that November and May that are the months following when those big property tax due dates are in April and October. So that's why we see those big influxes then rather than more consistent throughout the year.
Okay, thank you. All right, so anybody have any comments or questions about this resolution, proposed
I
resolution?
suspect the staff recommendation is to pass the resolution.
Yes, please.
I will move to pass resolution 2021-06, authorizing use of cash operating reserve fund as presented.
I second that.
All right, moved by Doug, seconded by Betsy. So let's take the vote. So Doug, how do you vote on this?
Aye.
Betsy?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
And me, aye. So that's unanimous. All right. That's the way we like it. All right, well, let's move on to the next resolution, which is the sustainable funding resolution. So Sarah, maybe you could talk about that, and then Doug had some comment.
And I'm on mute. I apologize there. This is a resolution actually brought forth by Doug. I will let him introduce that, but I have it pulled up on screen. And if I can add anything, Doug, let me know.
Okay, well, you've already added. I asked Sarah to have a look at it, and hopefully it'll get up on the screen pretty quick. The whole basic thing here is about 3 years ago, there was a survey of the districts all across the state, all 45, asking what their major problems were, major issues, and sustainable funding was one of those that came up. So I can't see the screen, on the screen, Sarah. So I thought, well, maybe the commission will bring it up during their strategic plan, and I didn't see it in there. So I thought, okay, I'm going to see if my board will support a resolution to go to the Southwest. And I'm hoping you all will. I understand that there's also one coming from Walla Walla. And what I intend to do, assuming you all say it's fine, is send it to each of the areas, key contacts, the area directors, and ask for their support of this. It's pretty simple, just basically for WACD to establish a sustainable funding committee. The only strange part might be the definition of what you mean by committee. Committee generally means a permanent thing. They often call them task forces or working groups. So the bylaws are not real clear on that, but I just want to get the ball into the arena so we can start playing with it and figure out what the best approach will be for everybody across the state. Sarah, you want to add anything?
I think that was great. This is definitely an effort that was a couple of folks began a while back looking at some different models. It's definitely a high priority need, I think, for districts to have some funding that is more stable and not subject to consistently applying for competitive grants or the will of the legislature, which can be pretty volatile. I think organizing districts and supporting, behind, one or two initiatives or something to look for sustainable funding is great and will support us in the future. The demand for district services just continues to exponentially increase, and I think this would allow us the ability to meet those needs.
It's particularly important with the smaller funded districts. They don't have a whole lot of money, so getting some consistent money for them would be very helpful. And the other thing is, in our strategic plan, we've laid out certain goals and objectives that we want to attain. We can do it because we've got rates and charges and there's some flexibility there. But if you have to follow the money by going for grants, that may not totally align with your strategic plan where you actually want to go. You may have to go for grants to make sure you have enough money to pay for staff.
So Doug,
I would think, yes.
Can you explain to me what sustainable funding means, like what you have in mind? Because I can't picture it.
Well, I put it ambiguous on purpose because it's going to mean different things to different people. The level of funding, to me, it means the level of funding the district needs, a minimum level that goes from year to year. And that's going to depend on a whole lot of different factors.
Based on
there's no number.
So sustainable means sort of based on what the strategic plan might be and being able to move that plan forward for a given district.
Yeah, I think that would be part of it. I think that would be a major part of it.
And then can you give me a hint about what you think that this committee might find would be a viable solution, just so that I can understand what it's looking at?
I think they'll probably lay out various scenarios of how to get funding, rates and charges, assessments, following the grant, getting a county to have it within their purview to put X amount for their conservation districts. Maybe there's been talk about supervisors having powers like county commission to tax. I don't personally want that because I don't feel qualified, or even that's not what I signed up for, but we'll see. I don't think that'll go anywhere. And there's different models around the country. Missouri, I think it is, has a tax on food or sales tax. They get like 0.02% or something like that, which gives them about $7 million a year. Okay. And then I think it's Nebraska. These supervisors have powers akin to a county commissioner.
Sarah, were you trying to get a word in there?
Oh, I was just going to add. No, please don't. I was just going to ask if I could add to that. I think it's sufficient funding to operate a district and meet community needs is one thing, as well as stable revenue sources, just the mechanism that they're receiving funds. There's some districts that, you know, are not successful with implementing rates and charges, so they don't have that local funding that they really need to meet that community demand and be a really stable organization and use that as match to grow. Doug identified some of the other initiatives that have happened throughout the state. I know Oregon also has a lottery program. So I think there's a lot of different statewide mechanisms that this committee can look at, both ones that have been identified and potentially new ones, you know, through other types of partnerships. I know that the private sector sort of partnership was one that was tentatively reviewed as well. So it would be definitely the objective of the committee to look and see what might be feasible and bring that back to districts at large to see what folks are behind, I guess, you know, what they're interested in pursuing.
Okay. Generally what happens is you put forth a resolution such as this and you get 2 or 3 other versions that are kind of similar, and then it morphs into something that kind of everybody can live with. Sometimes it goes sideways. I don't think this would. I think this is a common thing across the state, but I suspect some other areas will have something similar but not exactly the same. That's why I brought up the committee as opposed to a task force, as opposed to a work group. Somebody might have a different idea.
Okay.
So I would make a motion, Madam Chair, to adopt this resolution.
Okay, well, it looks like Betsy and David didn't have any questions. So let's go ahead then. So you've made the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, David has seconded. So how do you vote, Doug?
Aye, and thank you, David.
And David?
Aye.
Betsy?
Thank you, Doug.
Aye.
And I vote aye. So the motion passes.
You guys have all been virtually hugged, including Sarah. Thank you.
Doug, there's one typo. The word shift should be shifted. You'll find it.
I'll fix
I
that.
think
Betsy.
that
Thank
was
you.
part that Sarah had to do with. I don't think that was me at all. Couldn't have been.
Okay.
Thank you for finding
Couldn't
that,
have been.
Betsy. I will spruce that up before sending it to the other folks.
Great. Well, I think then it's time for the old COVID update. The good old COVID update.
I'll just double check that there weren't any other spontaneous resolutions coming to the floor from the board. Under other, I'm not aware of any. All right, COVID update.
What's new?
Thank you. Well, not a lot. It has changed since the COVID update we provided at the work session this month. We also, I would follow up and say that we did implement the changes that the board requested at the work session in terms of our keeping our office door locked during business hours, noting that it's mostly just one staff member in the office and the remainder of staff is primarily in telework. So for safety reasons and concerns, the door is locked with a sign. We do have a doorbell outside asking members of the public to ring the doorbell, that we are here, you know, between our office hours, and that way we can assist them and meet them at the door. So I think that was a great, some great direction from the board, and yeah, it seems to be working well.
Well, that's great to hear.
And that's all I have on COVID update.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to the other updates then. So I think the next one is Conservation and Education Center.
Yeah, and that one will be fairly brief as well. We are preparing for our Zoom kickoff meetings. So Beckwith Consulting Group is doing our feasibility study for our Conservation Education Center. We'll have 2 different kickoff meetings. They'll be meeting with the staff first, looking for any bits of clarification on some of the needs and programming and services and things that the district offers, and you know, looking at some of the expansion for some of those pieces. All of that data will be rolled up as part of the kickoff meeting for the board. And so we have canceled at the direction of the board our October work session. We'll use that time to do the Zoom kickoff meeting with Beckwith Consulting Group. All supervisors are able to participate and attend during that time. Thank you guys so much. So any materials, I've requested any materials that might be useful to the board to be sent ahead of time. If there's anything to review, if there's any list of questions that they develop, so that you guys have time to look at that and kind of think about those things prior to that meeting. This kickoff will also be a great time for you guys to meet the consultants, share your thoughts and priorities, and ask them any questions that you have about proceeding forward. So we'll have 2 hours for that meeting. I'll attend the meeting as well to support as needed. And that's all I have for Conservation and Education Center update.
Yeah, Betsy.
I just want to confirm, my calendar says that we might reschedule that meeting till evening. Is it at 3 o'clock or another time?
Yeah, we'll remain in that 3 to 5 time slot, replacing the work session.
On October 14th.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Anybody else on this one? Okay, well, let's move on then to the meeting schedule, the year-end board meeting schedule.
Yeah, so this is a great one. There's a couple of points that have come up in addition since we put this on the agenda that would be great for us to have some conversation about. Oops, I pulled up the wrong screen. So we have our October, November, and December board meetings coming up. Those are kind of our last board meetings of the year. We are combining, oh, Betsy.
Well, I'm still seeing the resolution. You sounded like you put up a different screen.
Yeah.
I wonder why. Do you see the agenda?
No.
No, we haven't been seeing the agenda for a while.
I wonder why this isn't working. Here, let's
I
try.
think your computer's got COVID.
The fan was making a weird noise. Do you see the?
There we go.
Agenda.
There we go.
Okay.
There we go. There's the agenda.
Goodness gracious, I apologize for that. I think it just doesn't like sharing an application. It likes sharing the screen as a whole. So sorry about that. Well, now I'm going to pull up a different document. You should be able to see the board meeting schedule. Can you see that as part of my report?
Yeah, I see that.
Great. I'm so glad it's working. So this is sort of the end of the year meeting schedule. The kickoff meeting you see on the 14th, the board meeting on the 28th. The board had previously determined to hold the November meeting on the 18th of November and the December meeting on the 16th of November, and canceling the work sessions associated with those months and just sort of combining that information into those meetings. There was a request to either remove work sessions or move meetings to evenings or Fridays, if applicable, but it doesn't sound like with this kind of augmented year-end schedule that might be a concern. So that would be a question of the board. Does this October through December schedule, is this good for the supervisors that are on the call?
Looks like it is. Yeah, Doug, I can't see you, so.
So I'm okay with it. Yeah, it looks good.
All right.
So I think it might be a good time to, as a component of this, I spoke with TJ to this meeting. He will not be able to attend the November 18th board meeting. He will be out of town and out of service Wi-Fi signal. So a couple items of important business that we tackle at the end of the year are, one, approving the next year's budget. Since that's being presented to you on October 28th, we would probably naturally schedule approval of that at the December 16th meeting, just in case the board requests adjustments and changes, and that way you have plenty of time to review. So that's sort of one path forward. The second is the executive director annual review happens at the end of the year too. That's me. And so typically that process starts at the November board meeting. TJ asked if the board would be comfortable having an executive session on the October 28th board meeting to discuss my performance and the list of partners that the board would like to reach out to around my performance, and then be able to facilitate that process and have the evaluation meeting at the December 16th board meeting. And that would give him an ability to participate with the other board members in discussion. So rather than having that in November, having that item of business in October. So those are kind of two bits of year-end business in terms of the budget approval schedule and the ED evaluation schedule that will reflect on those agendas if the board is comfortable.
Betsy, you're looking thoughtful.
I was reading the records management.
Oh, okay. So you're good with that?
Yeah.
Okay. And Doug, you're good. Oh, I see you. Yes. Okay, great.
Yeah, that works better than me being on mute half the time and coughing and all this other stuff.
All right. Yeah, I think that's a go then. If TJ's you know, able to start doing the legwork a little early. That's great.
Great. I will bring the agenda back up.
All right. Well, the next thing we have is the year-end budget adjustment proposal.
Thank you. I will bring this page up instead. So looking at the end of our this
You don't
is the
see
mid.
it.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
There it is. There it is.
It's slow to surface. Thank you, Betsy. So this is our mid-year revised 2021 budget. This is the current budget that we're operating under for the remainder of this year. As I noted in the memo that I sent to the board, our soil health program is extremely popular in the community. And so we are seeing another wave of that. Here we go on line 29 in the community. So we increased it a little bit at the mid-year budget to 40,000. We're on track at this point to exceed that pretty significantly. We've seen such a demand for soil analysis. It's just such a great community program, and there's a lot of folks that are interested in that. So the proposal that staff have for the board right now is we've looked at our budget. We've looked at line items that we're potentially going to underspend or not spend this year. And so our proposal is to shift those funds to the soil health program so staff can continue to serve community members that are interested in receiving soil tests and analysis during this fall year. A lot of folks, as you already know, do a lot of amendments in the fall, preparing them for the coming growing season. So that's an important piece. Doug, you have a hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. First off, why do you think there's been such an increase in the soil health program? And two, the ones where you shifted the money from, were any of those critical programs? I haven't seen this yet.
Yeah, so I'll get to that piece about what we're proposing to do in terms of the shift. We saw almost a fourfold increase this spring from our highest year on record in our soil testing program. I think there's been a lot more community awareness and word of mouth that has spread about the service that we offer by us, by our partners, again, you know, by community members. So we saw a dramatic increase, and that seems to be holding true for our fall wave. Our fall wave is typically a little bit smaller, but still we're seeing a significant increase from past fall timeframes. So I think it's just good outreach and awareness about the district and the work that the district does. We've folded in soil testing in a lot of our workshop elements too throughout this last, I would say, 18 months. And then we have the release of our new soil testing video too, that it is on our website, how to take a soil sample. So that went out in our newsletter. And I think we're seeing the direct reaction to that.
That sounds really good. I think kudos to Nora and the group.
Thank you. I will pass that on.
Betsy.
Yeah, I think it's cool too. And I'm wondering if COVID is, you know, actually helping us in some way to get the word out. You know, people are watching these videos, but instead of going to meetings and so on. But something just popped onto my screen. I know that the user of the soil test program pays. So is the cost to us the analysis part of it, or do we share the cost of the actual soil test with the public?
Yeah, no, you're correct. The fee that we collect from the community really just offsets the laboratory fees that we send. A&L Laboratories is what we use. It's the laboratory fee for the test itself, as well as some of the shipping costs to send that test. So we don't receive a whole lot in addition to that from those samples. And so we have processing time for some of our staff to actually intake the soil tests and do the packaging. We have to repackage them in a really appropriate way for the lab. and mail those. And then we have the analysis time. So actually receiving the soil test reports, which are just the numeric reports from A&L, and doing the interpretations and doing the narrative component based on the real-time site and types of crops and things that each individual tester is looking to grow. So we customize that information and then provide the resources and recommendations for amending that based on what the goals are of the individual that tests. And so those can be very basic for somebody who's just looking to have their lawn tested to see how they should fertilize that, to really complex for some of our more unique crops, or folks that have several different types of crops that they're growing and they want to have several different types of analyses written depending on those different types of crops. Berries will be very different from vegetable gardens, which will be very different from pastures, et cetera.
Well, I'm going to get to experience it directly because I'm submitting a test next week.
Absolutely. So you'll get to see those written reports. And we now do also offer a light version of our soil test. So we offer a really intensive soil test report for those that are new or need some really detailed information. We offer a very light soil test report for those that are have a good understanding of what they're reading and what they're reviewing and just really want the numbers each year. So they get just the basic information. And so that's sort of a self-select on the report piece there. It's something that we also try to cover as much as we can in grants when that's applicable. And we're just seeing such an increase in the demand for this that we don't have. It's great that we are able to invest in that with our rates and charges dollars. Are there any other questions on that? And then I'll move into our proposal for budget adjustment.
Yeah, it sounds like they're sort of repeat customers. Are they a fairly large percentage, or is it mostly newcomers that use the testing service?
I would say historically it was primarily repeat customers. It was farmers that are testing their fields annually to see what the appropriate level of amendments are needed for their fields for each year so that they're applying those appropriate amounts. This year we've seen a tremendous influx in new folks and a really big split too. So it's folks in urban and suburban settings, that have garden boxes in their front yard. It's still large farms testing pastures and everything in between. So it really is a very diversified service.
Well, and it's really great because it gets to the core mission. So it's wonderful that it's expanding. But it makes me wonder, if it's going to start expanding exponentially, how do we need to plan for that? Especially if the use might change a bit, there might be more people that just use it once, which makes it a little less reliable, I guess, what the demand is going to be. But if it becomes a really popular program, this could be a little bit exponential for a while. Which is
it is a good thing. And so the redesign and repackaging of this into a soil health program was one of the intentional transitions to set us up for some funding support for this. So now we have a more comprehensive soil health program, which is a really high priority in a lot of natural resource funding pools now, which is really great. So we can develop, and that's on our plan, that's on our short list. This is one of the hot programs to make sure that we can continue to generate additional revenue for, is specific tests or specific grants, around soil health and funding that. I'll also mention that the Conservation Commission is going to the legislature during the supplemental budget year, asking for specific funding through the Sustainable Farms and Fields bill for soil health technical assistance. And so if they're successful and they have a grant program for districts, we will definitely be knocking on that door because this and other soil health related practices are definitely in demand in this community, and we'll continue to generate additional revenue there.
Yeah, that's really exciting. All right. Well, if there are no further questions about that, I guess it's time to talk about October, the October agenda.
Well, I am asking, I am
Madam Chair.
looking.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. So we need where did that proposal go?
Yeah, so my proposal to the board is, and I talked a little bit with TJ about this ahead of time, is to move the funding that we have in this budget for JEDI work, and this is under professional services, so this is contracted services, not internal staff services, to cover the soil health program through the end of this year. If you'll remember, the board asked staff to put together an analysis of the work that we're doing already for justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, as well as the WACD putting together resources for conservation districts, and that presentation is going to be available at the WACD annual meeting following Thanksgiving or in and around Thanksgiving. And the board had determined that based on the information received from staff in that analysis and the resources generated by the DEI committee at WACD, that the board would then have a good discussion about what's available and where there are gaps to determine how to invest in that work. And so that's just due to timing of that. It looks like that's probably going to be a 2022 project if we are going to contract for any additional work. So I'm proposing that we use these dollars right now to cover our immediate need with soil health, and then look to our 2022 budget to include dollars for additional consulting for justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Okay.
Is that the full amount, Sarah? The 10,553?
I'm proposing that we move 10,000 of that. If we'd like to retain a little bit in there, that's fine. Currently, staff is waiting to receive direction from the board if the board would like to pursue any additional action via consultants for that line item.
So do we need a motion on that?
Yes, please.
General agreement. Okay. Well, then we're looking for a motion.
I'll motion to approve the budget amendment.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
I would like to have just a smidge of discussion. I think Sarah's proposal makes sense to wait till after the WACD presentation and the stuff we hear from them before moving forward. That might give us some more context.
Okay, so is that an amendment, a proposed amendment to the motion?
No,
Okay.
It's just a comment.
Okay. All right then. Well, let's move forward if there's no further comment. Okay. Well, David, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Betsy?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So that should make your life a little easier, Sarah?
Absolutely, and a happy bunch of folks that will receive some soil testing, and I'm grateful too that it will allow us time to have some good conversation about how to be the most effective in continuing our JEDI work too.
Yeah. Okay. So now I think we move on to the October agenda.
Yes, and I will pull that up here. And great. Can you all see the October agenda?
Yeah.
Well, I can see the first two items anyway.
Good. Hallelujah. It's the right document. So I will note that since the October work session was canceled. We added, part of the proposal to do that was just to add those presentations or those relevant items of business to the next board meeting. So that's our partner presentation here on rural agricultural development. And then our staff presentation on the board dashboard that you're seeing.
Great.
I have two suggestions. One is the Southwest area meeting is on October 13th. And so we should probably have a quick download from that. And then the other one is on item 13, closed session. Do we really mean executive session there?
So this was, I included this as a placeholder. We begin our collective bargaining on October 1st. This would be an opportunity if the bargaining team needs to come back and discuss any items or articles with the full board. This is a placeholder and something that we can certainly remove prior to the meeting when the packet goes out and the agenda is formally posted, which is in another month about. If we don't need it, the proposal from TJ was also to add an executive session to discuss employee performance. So I'll include that. Thank you.
So, but I think Doug, was your question whether the term closed session is the right term to use?
Yeah, it was basically both.
Yeah,
executive session part A and part B. Just closed session to me refers to something else, and I'd ask Ben what that means if it doesn't mean executive session.
Collective bargaining is covered under a different section of the OPMA than executive sessions are. Bargaining isn't a use of an executive session, but we are allowed under the RCW here, 4230, 140, allowed to have a closed session, which functions very similarly, just around negotiations. Yeah, this is what we used when we did our last collective bargaining agreement process.
Well,
yep,
Doug
that's
didn't
all right.
remember that part.
That is correct. So.
Okay. All right. Anything else to add to the agenda? No? Going once, going twice. All right. We'll let you finish typing that up.
Great.
Okay. And then when you're ready, or I guess even if you're not, we can move on to the supervisor report, Board of Supervisor reports. Anybody have anything to report? Yes, David.
Yeah, I'll just report. I was on the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee, and we did wrap things up here last week. Came up with a nice list of topics that we want to start having the WACD implement for us, which include gathering of information and forms, I guess, for the individual districts to start working with. I'm kind of waiting on a final report from them, at which time I'll write something out a little more formal for our board to look at, and so we understand what's going on.
Okay, great. Well, it's always good to gather information. I love information. Yeah. Anybody else? No. Well, I can tell you, if you're into or thinking about, as I am, getting an electric vehicle, the TRPC, their next meeting on October 1st, they're going to have a presentation on electric vehicles in Thurston County, kind of an overview, it looks like, which could be worth tuning into. And then also they are going to be talking about RIA 13 and giving some kind of an update, which could be interesting as well, given that the draft plan, as I recall, didn't pass as expected. So it will be interesting to hear what the next steps are. Am I correct in that there was kind of it didn't go through as as people were hoping?
Yeah, and the watershed restoration and enhancement committees facilitated by Department of Ecology, the plan developed for RIA 13 was not approved by the committee, which was required to take place before June. So the next thing that's initiated is ecology rulemaking is initiated, their rulemaking process, which they did take the draft plan that was completed into account as part of that process. So I do look forward to hearing updates on how much of that plan and the project list that we identified has been incorporated into their final ruling.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll hear about that on October 1st with the TRPC. We'll see. Okay, anybody else have anything to add at this point?
Helen, could you send out the link to listen to that electric vehicle thing? I'd be interested in that.
All right.
I will say I'm not interested in the WIRA 13 thing. That's my old life, and I don't want to go back.
Well, that's very understandable. Okay, I will do that. Would everybody like that, or should I just send it along to Doug?
Sure.
Okay.
I'd like it too.
All right. All right. Okay, well, next, Sarah, you're up again with your executive director report.
Yeah, I just have one quick piece, and that is I sent out an email earlier today to the board with links to provide public comment on the Thurston County Habitat Conservation Plan environmental impact statement with U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So this is a long time coming. This is the public comment period, and after this period closes, we'll be that much closer to developing and implementing a final HCP. So that's a really exciting step. And so if you have comments that you'd like to add, or you'd like to read more about that, there's links in that email that I sent out earlier today. The other thing that I'll mention as well, really briefly, is that with partners, WSU Extension and Eco Studies Institute, we are in the process of developing a grazing association of local grazers within Thurston County. It's one of our a deliverable of various grants that we have, focusing on helping to support and enhance and increase conservation grazing practices. So using grazing as a tool to enhance our landscapes, both our native and non-native landscapes. So this is a really complementary approach to managing our prairies. For example, there was a lot of research done in the last 3 years by Stephen Bramwell and Dr. Sarah Hammond from those respective organizations and some local grazers in this community. And so utilizing that place-based research and some of the great practices that we already recommend for conservation grazing, it's a little bit of a broader initiative that will extend to Thurston County and some of the surrounding counties to provide technical assistance and tools and implementation funding to support producers to do more conservation grazing, as well as to create a network, a peer-to-peer network to share knowledge and resources, and also advocate for types of trainings and support that they need from technical service providers like us. So it'll cover diverse types of grazing, so not just cattle, but folks that have sheep and stuff as well. So yeah, that's just a fun programmatic update.
When will that be starting?
Yeah, we're looking to schedule the first meeting of that association probably in early November. So a quick turnaround. We have kind of our final planning meeting coming up next week, and you should see a save the date come out shortly after that.
And how will farmers know about this?
It'll be direct invitation to grazers in the community. Yeah. So yeah, direct mail, phone call, email, multi forms of contact to those folks that are actively grazing. So there'll be more opportunities in the future too to fold in folks that are new farmers or folks that are looking into livestock farming. And the initial swath, I think, will focus on those existing producers that are managing the landscape currently.
And I would assume Sir Keith, as he likes to be referred to, Fagerness, will be on that list.
Absolutely, and I hope that he attends.
I will mention it to him too. Thank you. Sounds great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'd concur. I think that sounds like a really good idea. And how fun separating the sheep from the goats, from the cows and the alpacas, and etc.
It'll be well-rounded, wonderful feedback, and it'll be great to help inform our planning and programming. So I'm really looking forward to this. Facilitating these types of meetings is something I actually really enjoy. So I'm excited.
It'll be great.
And that's all I have for my report.
Okay, well, I think we're doing TJ proud here. It's we're coming in about 15 minutes short of our full length, so that's pretty good. If we have a motion to adjourn, that is.
I have one more small, really quick item, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right, let's have a little good of the order then. Doug?
Yeah, October 18th, there's a WACD board meeting. That's October 18th. It's a virtual meeting. That's it.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I second it.
All right. All in favor? Can we just do an all in favor at this point?
Aye.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? I think we're good. Motion passes.
Thank you, everyone. And thanks, Leah, for taking notes.
Yep. And thank you, Helen. Great meeting.
Well, I'm
Good job,
proud
Helen.
we brought it in, you know, with time to spare.
I didn't hear. Is TJ okay?
I don't know. Sarah, do you know? I think he's.
Yep. He just had something unforeseen come up, but on that note, there's still a quorum of you, so I'm gonna end the recording because our meeting is over. But TJ is fine. Thank you.
Bye.